today's webinar. Again, Croatia, Slovenia, and the Adriatic Coast happening next October. Just a couple of quick words about Wheel and Anchor, what we're all about. And then I'll introduce this guy who's been sitting patiently next to me. And if you are new to our community, we've had a lot of members join us over the last several weeks. This was a vision that I had a few years ago about how Canadians like to travel and how we like to travel with one another. And, you know, we have a certain style, a certain sort of low touch, soft-footed approach to exploring the world and meeting other people and all the rest of it. And I think that that's something that really resonated in all the years that I've been bringing Canadians on trips to all parts of the world, and why I thought it was sort of the hallmark, the foundation of what our community is all about. It's embodied in our Travelers Creed, and just in sort of the way we like to explore and have fun along the way. So that's kind of what our mission is, if you will, at Wheel and Anchor. But my goal is that everybody become well-traveled, well-connected. Here's a photo here from a past trip to Lake Bled that we did. This was actually our first trip, so this is going back a few years ago, and we had a marvelous time. And again, the thing that sets us, I think, a little bit, makes us different than some other companies and communities, is the fact that people become good friends, and they just have a lot of fun along the way, and that just and people come back and then go on other trips and go on their own trips, and for me, it's all about becoming connected to your fellow travelers and becoming well-traveled in the process. So let me get on with the meat and potatoes of today's webinar. So my name's Gordon. I'm the founder of Wheel and Anchor, and I think that many of you will know me already at this point. And if you don't, this is me. I'm joined by Paula and Barb. In particular, Barb is with us on the webinar, our wonderful trip specialists who are there to answer all your questions and get you signed up for any of the trips that you might be interested in. And my special guest today, Mr. Alfred Poole, otherwise known as Alfie. He hosted our last trip to Croatia that happened back was May, I guess, right? Yeah, it was just May of this year. And everybody had a marvelous time, a lot of fun. I heard only rave reviews. And so Alfie's going to share some of his experiences from that last trip and what you can expect in Croatia. So he and I are going to take you on a little digital journey along one of the most beautiful coastlines in Europe. People talk about it rivaling the fjords of Norway for the scenic beauty and the villages and towns. It's really a very popular destination, and I think we have one of the best itineraries going. And Alfie and I are going to take you on this little tour of Croatia, Slovenia, and the Adriatic Coast. So let's dive into what the program is all about. And I'm going to let Mr. Alfie do some of the talking in a minute. But for a moment, let's look at the map. We, of course, start our program up in Ljubljana, or officially we fly into Ljubljana, but we start in Lake Bled up in Slovenia. A lot of people don't know about Slovenia. We're going to share some thoughts with you in a moment, but it is like a hidden gem of Europe. It's a beautiful, beautiful country. So that's why we're going to spend 4 nights up in Lake Bled, touring around a little bit of Slovenia, Ljubljana itself, the Postojna Caves, and we're also even going to head across the border into Austria. So first part of the trip up there, then overland, stopping in Plitvice, which is, of course, famous for its waterfalls. The national park there is really quite breathtaking. And then we're going to head down to Split, which is I think the second largest town in Croatia. Second. Yeah. And that's where we embark on our ship into this wonderful archipelago in southern Croatia, going down as far as Dubrovnik, and then coming back to Split. And for the last part, again, overland via Zadar up to Istria, which is this peninsula here in the northern part of Croatia. And it's kind of like the food capital, the bread basket, if you will, of Croatia, and then flying back from Ljubljana. So that's the map, the overview. And now, with Alfie's help, let's look into the day-by-day program. So first of all, you're going to fly into Ljubljana Airport, which, even though you may have never heard of Ljubljana before, or let alone flown there, it's actually relatively easy to get to. You can fly via Frankfurt and Munich and there's a number of different connections into Ljubljana. And then when you arrive there, you're going to be met at the airport and taken all the way to Lake Bled, which is, I think, a whole 30-minute drive.
Oh, not massive, no. And then you arrive in somewhere completely different from being in the bustle of a city to this serene environment.
Yeah. And it's just so breathtaking, this whole area, that's why I think the first time we did this trip, we stayed right in Ljubljana, but Slovenia is all about this mountain, this alpine scenery and these lakes and all the rest of it.
It's total fairy tale feel when you get up to Lake Bled. It's
and the color of the water, it's in this picture, you can't quite get it. It is remarkable. And so we'll check into our lovely hotel in Lake Bled that day. You'll have some time at leisure. Maybe a little welcome dinner, a bite to eat, get to know your fellow members on the trip. And then the next day, it's up to Lake Bohinj. So, Alfie, what was your experience from this past year?
Yeah, so Lake Bohinj, it was just another example of the beautiful scenery that you experience up here, the wonderful nature. There's not a great deal to Lake Bohinj when you go to the town there, but it's just another stunning environment to go and enjoy and take in the scenes.
Yeah, and it's part of, I think, the Triglav National Park, if I'm not mistaken. And this whole corner is, like Lake Bled is a bit touristy because it's Lake Bled, as touristy as Slovenia gets, and you got to keep in mind that it is kind of off the tourist map for a lot of people in Europe.
Absolutely.
But we're going to venture out a little bit and take in these parts that are just so pretty. And again, I think most people come away really remembering Slovenia is, how did I not get to this country before?
Absolutely.
We then on the next day here head down in the direction of Ljubljana. In fact, we go past Ljubljana to the south and head down to Postojna. And we were just talking about this before we got on the live webinar, and how you were saying it was...
it's got to be the most astounding cave system I've ever visited. Not that I'm particularly a cave enthusiast, but it was quite remarkable. You take this train into the cave you think it's going to just be a short little journey, and you're continuing on for however long. And once you get in there, you're learning about how slowly these stalagmites and stalactites grow, and it's just hundreds of thousands of years of effort of the world to create this incredible environment that you can enjoy.
And beautifully preserved. Like, a lot of these caves, they end up too late, I think, protecting them but here Postojna is really, really remarkable. So it's definitely worth a visit. So we'll spend a part of the morning there, and then we'll head into Ljubljana itself, which is, if you've been to Austria before, it has sort of that feel to it, like an Austrian small city. It's just on the river, shops all along. And so we'll spend a good chunk of the afternoon there, and it'll give you a nice taste of Ljubljana. I know that on our last two trips, some of our members actually came a day or two earlier because they wanted to stay in Ljubljana. Certainly something you can consider if you're going to join us for this trip.
Some great restaurants for sure.
Yeah,
it's certainly worth
and
it.
The castle up on the hill. It's not
a
big
scene.
Yeah, it's for sure.
Yeah.
And it's not a big city, so you certainly can see what you need to see in an afternoon. That's for sure. But a lovely stop and a great day.
Beautiful architecture as well.
Yeah,
really.
Yeah, I again, if I remember the first time going to Ljubljana, and I was really, really, taken aback, because I was like, I didn't really expect such a charming town in a country that, again, is mostly forgotten.
Yeah, and I mean, it's one of Europe's capitals as well. It's such a small population as well, for like 200 and something thousand people for a capital city.
For a capital city,
but it's like it almost feels more like a town, but you get to you can see the whole thing quite comfortably.
Slovenia is of course right on the border to Austria to the north, and we forget in Lake Bled, I think it's in like less than half an hour. It's like
really close.
All of a sudden, boom, you're in Austria. And again, Austria, a country near and dear to my heart. I went to school there, spent a lot of time there, but most people don't really get beyond sort of Vienna, Salzburg, and maybe Innsbruck if you're a skier type of a thing. And so the whole southern part of Austria, there's tons to explore, but the region of Carinthia, as it's called, is known for its lakes, and we're going to take a bit of a boat trip on the Wörthersee, which is the largest and one of the warmest lakes in Austria.
Stunning as well. You know, you've got mountains protruding on both sides, and you can just beautiful lake ride.
Yeah, and what I like about doing Slovenia with a little bit of Austria is you start to see the similarities between the countries, and like, you know, in some ways, I think you cross the border and it's like, have we crossed the border? Are we still in Slovenia? Are we still in Austria? So that's kind of interesting as well, because it's very distinct. Slovenia, it's completely different language, a completely different, you know, ethnicity in a way. And I mean, there's so many differences, and yet there's so many similarities. And Austria and Slovenia have always maintained close ties. And so, yeah, certainly worth spending a day in seeing a little bit of a part of Austria that you probably wouldn't otherwise get to. So that will round out the first leg of our trip, which is based in Lake Bled. From here, we hop on a coach and we make our way down to Plitvice. So it's a couple hours down, but you get to Plitvice and then boom.
There you are. You're in the main event, I guess, for Croatia, the main thing that they're really known for. You can't justify a trip to Croatia without going to Plitvice. I don't think. It's just... yeah, stunning, absolutely stunning. And it's such an extensive set of wonderful lakes in these beautiful parks that, yeah,
it lakes
can't be missed.
And waterfalls. It is Croatia's gem. I mean, other than, of course, their coastline, which we're going to spend a week in. But I remember that the first time I ran this trip, we left it out, and then I had people say, "Oh, how come we're not going to Plitvice?" And you know, now they're going to have to come back again and just to see Plitvice. But it is a stop worth making. We're going to overnight there. We're going to spend a good, you know, few hours of the day. Towards the end of the day, we're trying to organize it so that you're not everybody, because it is a busy place, being Croatia's, you know, one of their number one tourist destinations. So we try to organize it so that you can get in when you're going a little bit against the flow.
But, I mean, tourists and locals alike. It's people go there even as Croatians because it's just that stunning. You know, it's not that you can swim there anymore. You used to be able to swim many years ago, not anymore.
That's all right. We'll save the swimming for the actual
when we're in the ocean.
When we're in the Adriatic Sea, exactly. So a night in Plitvice, and then again next day continuing on driving down towards the coast. So we're heading kind of southwest here, and before we arrive in Split, where we'll embark on the boat, we'll stop at a charming little town called Trogir. Yeah. And I know the reports that I get back about this is that it's just such a, there was other stops actually that we originally did. You made another stop, and we eliminated all those and said, just spend a couple hours in Trogir.
It's worth the extra time. I mean, I hadn't been there actually before going on the trip, and I was just thinking when I left, I could take extra time here. This is a beautiful little on a harbor. Stunning.
On a harbor, a lovely cathedral, a compact little city, and narrow streets, and gelato you can get over there. I remember half our group said, we don't want to go in the cathedral. We're just going to sit out front and have a gelato and a glass of wine. Anyway, it's a terrific little space, a great little break before we get to Split. And then, of course, the main event, if you will, is the cruise. And for this October sailing, this is why we're a little bit late coming out with this trip, quite honestly, because I normally would have had it out before, but I was wrangling for ships. And just the short story on that, if you haven't followed the line, during COVID, the whole industry obviously didn't operate, but the banking industry stopped financing new boats being built. And so they haven't built any new boats in Croatia for 2 years. And as a result, but the demand, of course, for travel came back, and they're all spoken for. However, I got my hands on this baby. This is one of the Ave Marias. Was built in 2018, so she barely got a year of service in before COVID came along. She's brand new. She is arguably one of the most luxurious vessels on the Adriatic Coast. I was able to get her. Anyway, I'm not going to explain how I did it. It was all above board, I promise. Magic. Yeah, magic. I feel like it was magic. And the Ave Maria is a beautiful, beautiful ship. Similar in size to all the others. It's got 18 cabins and just terrific amenities you'll see in here. It feels kind of like a grand ballroom. Everything is Really, really nice, like beautiful finishes on everything, excellent food, great staff. It's a great ship. Again, you get a sense of that feeling of opulence. It's almost like more like being on a real super yacht in terms of the quality of the finishes and everything on board, the cabins themselves, lovely linens and towels. It's comfortable. And we have cabins on the main deck and on the upper deck, or the lower deck and the main deck, depending on, they all have similar nomenclatures, but there's 2 decks. And the way we've been able to set this up is to be able to give pretty darn good competitive pricing for solo travelers traveling in lower deck cabins. So anyway, you'll see that when we get to the pricing point. And so we've organized this in a way because, we have a lot of solo travelers and we want them to come along and we want them to be able to have their own cabin without paying through the nose. So the deal we've made with the ship, I think, is a pretty attractive one. And as I say, it's a great vessel for this journey. So we embark in Split. The general sort of flow of the day is that you're in port in the evening, you sail first thing in the morning, and then you arrive in a destination somewhere between late morning and midday.
It depends. Sometimes even a bit later than that, but something like 11 till maybe 1:30 usually. You tend to pull up wherever your destination for that day is.
And then you're there for the afternoon, sometimes with a guided tour, depending on if it's, a larger town like Korčula, for example. Sometimes you have free time and you're in port for the afternoon, the evening, for dinner. You get to go out and enjoy the local restaurant scene. And then the ship again leaves the following morning. So it's the optimal schedule for visiting these towns and cities in Croatia. So
it's super easy as well. Like, it's navigable, like, where the boat is moored up, it's very straightforward to go and explore the town on your own, and you can have dinner at your leisure, or maybe there'll be a dinner arranged, but after that, we don't need to necessarily bring you back to the boat, because the boat, where the boat is. It's not hard to find it. Again, there's only one, you go to the water and there you can see it, and so the boat doesn't leave until the morning. So a lot of the time, the evening time is at your leisure. You can go with other members for a drink, or there might be some live music,
and this is the best time this is the best time to sort of explore these towns, because you're there at sunset and people are out and having dinner, and it's quite lively, and it's lively. You're seeing the real life. And that's kind of what this is all about. That's the idea of this itinerary and how it's been orchestrated. So first stop, Korčula. There's lots of great stops on this trip. I gotta say, Korčula is my favorite. I just love this town, the way it's set up on a slight hill, all in a herringbone pattern. They designed Korčula so that the wind would create natural ventilation for the hot summers. We're going in October, which is perfect because the weather is just lovely. It's not too warm and not too cool. But just the layout of the town is super neat. And I think we do a wine tasting here. You will taste more Croatian wine than you've probably ever drank in your life. But some of it's pretty darn good.
It is. I mean, especially when you get, they don't export a lot of it, is what I understand. Yes. They like it.
There you go. They like their wine. They don't export it. And so Korčula is a little guided tour of this charming city. You can see in the picture, I don't know if you guys got up there, but there's this tower where you can go up, and there's a bar up there with a view over the harbor. And I know you have to climb up a ladder or something to get into this bar. Wouldn't meet code, but there's just interesting things to do. And the dinners, like the little sidewalk cafes, it's my favorite town of all the towns that we're going to visit. How we've organized the itineraries, we're going to head out of Korčula in good time, because we've orchestrated this based on feedback from our last trips, so that there is a bit more time in Dubrovnik, because that was the one thing people said, it's so much to see here, we need a bit more time. So we will arrive in Dubrovnik hopefully by sort of early to mid afternoon, and we'll have the whole rest of that day in Dubrovnik, and then the following day as well. So you get a day and a half, which I think is really a big bonus, because most people, let's face it, end up in Dubrovnik on cruise ships, and there you're lucky to get 4 or 5 hours, because the ship sort of moors in the morning and is gone by 3 or 4 in the afternoon. So to spend a day and a half here, I think is really, really worth it, because I don't know, Dubrovnik for me, when you stand on the walls of Dubrovnik, and we give you the Dubrovnik pass as well, so that you have admission to the walls. Back in the day, they were free 20 years ago, but now, of course, there's so many people there, they have to charge for them, but we give you, that's included in the program. And I tell you, standing up on those walls for me was like the Great Wall of China, or it is just a breathtaking city.
Everything about it. Yeah, I mean, it's so beautifully preserved as well. Once you're inside of the city walls, everything is kept so lovely, and the architecture is phenomenal. And like you say, being on the walls feels this very, I don't know, empowering experience. I think
it's just a moving, empowering experience.
The views are phenomenal.
The views and all the stuff inside, and it's a busy place, let's face it. But again, because we have that day and a half, we can organize it. We always look at, when are the cruise ships in town, when are they leaving, and so that you can get up on the walls and witness this marvel of a well, it used to be a city state, right? It was its own country. It was completely sovereign. But anyway, so you can get up and see the things at the time that are the least busy times, right? So I all in all, there's a lot to say about Dubrovnik. As I say, we spent a whole day and a half there on this itinerary, which I think is brilliant. We'll have lunch at dinner again at Posat, which I happened upon on my first trip to Croatia, and we fell in love with it. So since then, it's become a mainstay of our trip. Is Posat, which is just outside the is it the East Gate of the
West
or the West Gate? Anyway, about just outside one of the main gate, effectively, of Dubrovnik. And impeccable dining and service, and all part of our experience in Dubrovnik. So we'll have a guided tour for sure for a couple hours, but most people are just itching to go out and wander and just take all in all of this very ancient city, which certainly lives up to its reputation. So, as I say, 2 nights effectively in Dubrovnik. We'll head out fairly good time the next day to Pelješac. Now, this is actually a new stop in the itinerary because we, again, took feedback from our past trips and we decided to come into here because this is where we're actually going to take some time to go up and do our farm visit. So we're going to go away from, this is actually one of the islands that is off of the Pelješac Peninsula that we'll probably stop at. But when we get to Pelješac itself, we're going to head out and have a little farm experience in the countryside at a Croatian farm, and really get what the home cooking is like, and the local wines and all the rest of it.
I mean, in a country with so many beautiful islands, it's amazing to have the opportunity to visit somewhere that actually a lot of other groups will not be going. A lot of tours do not go to. They stick to this sort of route along the coast there, and they visit some of the hot spot islands. So to be able to go somewhere unique like this is.
It's really neat. And this is why, as I say, no 2 tours of ours are exactly the same, because, we look at these things and we look at, where are the masses going? They're going that way. We try to go that way. And so we have some little treats along the way, like Pelješac and then Hvar. So this is definitely one of the stops in the
probably the top pick of the islands anyway. I mean, because Dubrovnik is not on an island, but Hvar is definitely sort of top pick.
It's the top pick. You can see by the mega yachts parked out front here. This is kind of like the jet set place to go in Croatia. So there's always a hustle bustle activity. And again, this is what I like about this trip, is that we go to some quieter spots out of the way, not so many tourists, seeing a little bit of the rural life, which set amongst the backdrop of these mountains is really, really cool. But to see this, Mediterranean hotspot, if you will, of Hvar, there's a beautiful fortress here that overlooks the whole harbor, almost kind of like the view that you see here in the photo.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, and you see out amongst all of the islands, and the town itself, super cool. We'll have a little bit of a guided tour. There is a painting of, I think, the Last Supper in there in that museum, if I'm not mistaken, isn't there?
I believe so. Yeah.
There's a very significant paint, and like you see a lot of paintings when you go on some of these trips, but there's some really pleasant little surprises. As usual, we stay overnight here. We'll go out for dinner, and just sitting on that palm line boulevard, having dinner in one of those restaurants overlooking the harbor, being in part of the vibe. It's a wonderful experience.
Hvar is the more lively of the islands. It's got a wonderful little scene there. Lots of lovely little shops for sort of little souvenirs and things. But yeah, Hvar is memorable. I'd put it.
Yeah, memorable. It's I totally agree. And then from Hvar, we head over to the island of the town is called Bol, and the island of, we were just talking about it. I just wanted to
be Brač.
Brač, exactly. So Brač is in the summertime again. It's like that's where the beaches are. So people head here by the gajillions. Mm-hmm. Thankfully, we're not going in. You wouldn't want to. Shouldn't say. I mean, it's I'm sure lovely in summer, except for the bajillions of tourists that are there. October is the best month to actually see Croatia without having a thousand people in front of you. And Bol, well, I mean, you describe your
experience. It's a lovely little town. Bol had a great ice cream shop. That's what I remember of it. But yeah, you take this wonderful little wander along there, and then our guide, I recall, had a friend who had a beautiful little shop that had nice little jewelry pieces and things like that. But it's very small. Like Bol is a very small little town, and but yeah, it was a lovely little afternoon wandering around, and there's spots to swim along here and things like that as well.
Yeah, and the sea is actually in October still quite. I mean, it's not as warm as it is in August, obviously, but
but I mean, it's actually very refreshing to get in, and when I went, everybody was in the water every day, pretty much every time we took a swim stop. And it's wonderful. It's really,
and you were there in early May, so the water and typically in early May is actually cooler than in October because October the weather is the sea has stayed warm from the summer typically until people are swimming well into the end of October. Mm-hmm. So that'll be the last stop on the cruise before it ends back in Split. And so there'll be, I guess, one more night on the boat in Split. I think the final night is on the boat. And Split is a great town in itself.
Absolutely. There's things in Split not to miss. I mean, there's lots of wonderful old architecture there for these sort of old ruins that the town is still built on, and they are still features in the town. There's this amazing sort of old amphitheater where you can sit and have a cocktail and there'll be somebody singing there, and the acoustics are just phenomenal. And again, like we were saying about Hvar, very lively place. Loads of phenomenal restaurants.
Yeah. There's the Diocletian's Palace there, and I always remember that place because they tour you into basically the septic tank, because the whole thing was built in this and it's like you are now sitting where the excrement of all of this royalty was. It doesn't smell it more, right? but you're sort of sitting here going, oh great, but a tour of the septic tank. Anyway, it's fascinating. It sounds a little crazier than it is, but it's marvelous. And again, narrow streets. It's such a cool little city. So that'll be where the cruise ends up. Disembarkation the next morning. We will now head overland back north. So we're heading back up towards Istria, and we will arrive. We'll make a stop in Zadar, which is another lovely seaside town that's sort of halfway. So you have a couple hours drive, have a nice lunch.
A little bit smaller than Split and some of the other spots I think that we visit, but it's had a lot of investment in recent years, and they've got this quite astounding sea organ on the coast where the waves lap up against the wall and it makes sounds, and it's like it's fascinating,
funky stuff.
And
we'll end up in Opatija, and Opatija is really this was the sort of the seaside resort of European royalty back in the day. So it has a very grand feeling to it. Some of the old buildings and the castles. And
their guest list is quite ridiculous.
It's ridiculous. I mean, because I obviously was educated in Austria, and I remember the Emperor and Empress of Austria, Kaiser Franz Josef, was always that they went to Opatija, and so it's kind of a cool spot. So we'll spend 3 nights there. Opatija is at the head of the Istrian Peninsula. And so Istria, which, as noted here, the largest peninsula, the Adriatic Sea, is kind of like the foodie destination or bread basket.
The best olive oil in the world.
There you go. The best olive oil in the world is
highly competitive competition.
Yeah, I've had a lot of olive oil this year with our various trips. So we'll head out around Istria, and I think you said that this is Rovinj, if I'm not mistaken.
This town, I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah,
Looks like
and
a bit
so
on the
we'll
border
visit a
there.
couple of picturesque towns. One of them being Pula, which is the largest town in Istria, with this amazingly preserved Roman Colosseum.
Yes, you can go inside and be toured around, and it's in really great shape and gives you sort of explains the status, I guess, that this place used to have.
Brilliant. So then we have one more day in Motovun, which is a fortified town, kind of up in the hills.
So this one almost reminded me of some of the places I've been in Italy, actually. Well, I mean, which kind of adds up because a lot of this part of the world used to be part of an Italian state, but it's, you climb up this hill, and then you've got this beautiful Castello town on top of the mountain, and you can walk around the walls and see the beautiful views and all the different directions around it. And it's known for truffles, I believe.
Truffles, yes. This is truffle
truffles.
country. Yes, this is truffle country.
So every menu is full of truffles here. If you like truffles, then this is where you can get them.
Who doesn't like truffles? Anyway. So it'll be a nice way to sort of round out the trip here with the rest of the day. We're going to have more time now in Opatija itself to wander around, pick up those last Croatian souvenirs or goodies or taste snacks, whatever it happens to be. And that will wrap up the trip. And from here, it's back to Ljubljana, where we'll fly out from. So, that's the trip. So I'll give you a few little logistics items here on this trip for next year. Again, this is October of next year. We have the Ave Maria, which is one of the most luxurious vessels in Croatia. So as a result, our prices have gone up slightly from last year, partly because of this ship, which was the only one we could get. But we actually got the best one. So I got really lucky that way. But as you can see here, for singles, for solo travelers, it's a relatively modest price increment to have your own cabin on this trip. We don't have tons of cabins. There's only 6 on the lower deck, but nonetheless, we'd love our solo travelers to join us there. And all of the details, of course, in the program itinerary that you're going to get sent to you together with a replay of this webinar. Inclusions, as with most of our programs, you've got, lovely accommodations. We've gotten really I think the best possible hotels this time around. Not to say that we didn't have great hotels before, but we've raised the bar a little bit on this program, which I'm quite excited about. Breakfast every day on board ship. You have lunch every day on board the ship. There are a couple of special dinners like the one at Posat we were talking about, and the captain's dinner, and there was also one other dinner we
did another one in Split as well.
In Split, yeah, which was also a very well received restaurant, and so there's lots included, and the Dubrovnik card, as I mentioned, and so on and so on and so forth. So it's a pretty well packed program in terms of all the inclusions. Generally, you just have to look after airfare, which obviously we can facilitate for you, and the cancellation insurance, which of course is kind of critical in this day and age. Airfare prices, at the moment, the prices are actually still a little bit lower than what's shown here, but this is kind of what, if you're budgeting, what to expect for economy class out of Toronto, Montreal, or from the West Coast, Vancouver, Calgary. Again, this is anticipating flying typically via Frankfurt or Munich are the most common gateways to get into Ljubljana. But again, I know some of our members, flew into Vienna and took the train down, or, there's lots of different ways to get over there, particularly if you're going to combine it with a longer trip around Europe. So now is the opportunity to address any questions that anyone has. And Barb, please tell about
so if anybody has questions, put them in that question and answer box. So right now we have somebody's asking, is it just wheel and anchor members on the cruise part of it?
Good question. And yes, we are chartering this exclusively for wheel and anchor. This is one of our things that we do. We charter this vessel, so it's only wheel and anchor members.
Okay. And then how active is it in terms of people's activity level, and is there choice on that of how active you need to be, or is there an option to relax or what have you?
So it kind of depends from day to day. Most of the activities that are included, it's the level of exercise you want to do is kind of up to you. For example, when you were in Lake Bled, there to go up to the church, which is on the top of the little islet, is 100 steps. But we are there for a little while, so you can take it at your own pace. There's no rush. But similarly, you can wait at the bottom, or you can not come if you don't want, and simply go back to the hotel. It's walking around Bled Lake is only an hour, maybe, or an hour and 40.
As a general rule,
that you can participate in, and there's parts you don't have to participate in. And when you're in Hvar, there's the fort on top of the hill. We organized taxis back down last time, or you can walk back down. Both, it's kind of up to you.
Yeah, and I think that as a general rule of thumb, our members are pretty active, because you can't really experience a lot of these towns without walking. And there are steps and narrow alleys and cobblestones and all the rest of this kind of stuff. So, this isn't a, you can definitely enjoy the cruise and not have to be super active. And we've had some members that are like, yeah, I'm happy to just sort of ride along on the excursion. And but for the most part, you want to be able to walk.
Okay, we do have a few people actually asking about numbers and how many people, like how big the group size would be.
So that's an excellent question. So the ship has a total of 18 cabins, and how we did it, which has worked very well on our last 2 trips, or sorry, I should say on our last trip, because it was a similar situation where we had the whole vessel. We split the group into 2, so that all of our excursions and sightseeing and all the rest of it are done in groups of roughly 13 to 15 people, maximum 15. So although there'll be a total of around 27 of us on the vessel, but the key thing is the sightseeing part and going around with the guide in all aspects of the itinerary. And that's where we do everything in groups of in 2 groups. So we have a modest group size.
Okay. Is there opportunity to swim somewhere on the itinerary?
Most days when we were cruising between an island to the next, you might stop for, it would be as long as you wanted to swim for, but maybe half an hour or something. Everyone can get in the Adriatic and enjoy it's beautiful clear water. If you're somebody who likes looking under, I'm a diver myself, I like looking under the water, so I take my goggles and things and love swimming around and having a look around. So, but you can also swim in some of the bays if you're not feeling so confident about jumping into deeper water. Then some of the bays where we park up in, there are certainly little areas where you can swim or be in the water that's not sort of where you can't touch the bottom. Yeah,
exactly. I remember in Hvar, I walked around to where the beach was on the other side of the town and swam in there, and it was lovely.
See this picture here is Croatia, I think, and you can see here.
Yeah, there's a little beach there. Yeah, right? So there's definitely swimming opportunities both from the ship as well as from the towns. Yeah, and it's part of it, part of the experience.
Okay, I don't see any other specific questions here, so people can call us or email if they do have other questions that come up. And we do have Galapagos webinar, if you want to mention that on the this week on Thursday.
That's right, on Thursday. So just a note for you, if in case you missed it in the newsletter, I'm really excited. We're going to be launching the first ever of our Galapagos programs. This is a really amazing. Once again, I've chartered a vessel in the Galapagos Islands, and so we're touring a bit of Ecuador, the Valley of the Volcanoes, and Quito, which I think is a marvelous city. If you're interested in Galapagos and Ecuador, tune in on Thursday for that webinar, or just register for it and you'll get the replay sent to you as usual. So yeah, that's coming up. And otherwise, thank you so much for taking your time. Alfie, thank you for providing your insights on our last visit to Croatia. And I hope you'll join us. It is a popular trip. The last trips have all sold out pretty quickly. So I do suggest, if you're interested, drop us a note, get your name on the list. Look forward to catching up with you all again very soon.